Us?
Yep.
Oh. Hi guys, welcome to round 5 of Costa Mesa Regionals. I'm Regina Angley and here is Lendl for you guys today. I'm super pumped. This round 5's going to be really, really exciting. We have Anthony Stefani versus Juan Polo
Juan
sorry.
Cambon.
No, come on, my bad, sorry. So one a local NorCal player and the other one from Argentina.
Yeah, so a player coming a long way for this SoCal Regional Championship, all the way from Latin America. And then Anthony Stefani, a player who regularly does pretty well in the NorCal area, doesn't travel too much, but definitely a name I've seen around before in these California tournaments.
So going to be super fun, especially for people who are kind of unaware of the Latin America scene. So not to make too big a deal about it, but a little bit of pressure, I think, on Juan right here for that kind of representation.
Yeah, and we're going to jump right into it. They're already on team preview.
Yeah,
so
there we go. So on your left side, we've got Anthony with the Tapu Koko, Politoed, Mimikyu, Dragonite, Mawile, and Snorlax. And on the right side, we have Juan Pablo's team with the Metagross, Landorus, Therian, Amoonguss, Zapdos, Tapu Lele, and Tyranitar.
Yeah, so definitely a Trick Room mode there from Anthony. He's got the Mimikyu, Mawile, and Snorlax, two attackers with the Mawile and Snorlax, and that Mimikyu that's so consistent in setting it up with its disguise ability. And then on the other side, we have that oh-so-common Metagross and Amoonguss Tyranitar core with the Tapu Lele to provide Psychic Terrain support also, but there is a Politoed on the other side, so kind of an anti-weather for that Tyranitar. And then that Dragonite maybe has Hurricane, sometimes paired with Politoed, but we've seen more physical Dragonites recently, so could go either way there.
Yeah, and really fun, so we've got the whole weather and the terrain where that is a possibility from either side, and then the whole rain mode that can help support a Mega Mawile. But so we've got Juan on sending out this Metagross and this Landorus, and Mimikyu and Tapu Koko coming from Anthony. So we will be getting a terrain setup from Tapu Koko and an Intimidate from the Landorus onto both Tapu Koko and Mimikyu. The Landorus being faster, getting the Intimidate first from one side before the Tapu Koko's Electric Surge.
Yeah, it's important. Reveals its Choice Scarf, which means that Mimikyu is not safe out here to Trick Room. If it loses its disguise to anything this Landorus does, then it can just be KO'd by Metagross. So that Tapu Koko is, that Metagross is definitely vulnerable. Tapu Koko has to feel vulnerable also. There's something like Zapdos in the back. If Metagross just switches and that Earthquake comes out, Tapu Koko could go down very quickly. So this is definitely a dangerous position for Anthony to be in, and a strong lead for Juan Pablo.
And even with that, like you said, that disguise, that Mimikyu is still in a position to be really hurt. But we have the Snorlax switch in from the Tapu Koko slot as Metagross from one side going to be hitting the field, going to be getting that tough calls ability after it Mega Evolves. So any sort of damage it's going to be dealing is going to be super powerful right now. Mimikyu protecting on this turn, though, going to keep its disguise intact for this round and not going to be taking any damage. As Landorus U-turns into protected Mimikyu slot. And Iron Head also into the slot of Mimikyu, so getting that switch in really nicely up on Anthony's side.
Yeah, and revealing that play to U-turn and KO or U-turn, break this disguise, and then have Iron Head come out and KO the Mimikyu. Anthony smart there to protect that Mimikyu, keep both the disguise and the Pokemon itself safe, and get Snorlax in. Though Snorlax doesn't come into a super strong spot here, threatened by a lot of damage from Metagross. Snorlax is going to just have to U-turn out here. We have revealed the Choice Scarf, so it'll be just using U-turn again next turn and can just come back in and intimidate that Snorlax in the future. So still a dangerous position here for Anthony.
Mimikyu actually switching out from on Anthony's side in for that Mawile, which I was super excited about this morning to try and see. We have another Intimidate from this, so we have an Intimidate from the Mawile onto the Landorus and the Metagross, going to be lowering them by one attack stage as Landorus locked into that U-turn, going to be hitting into the Mawile slot this time, not doing any damage at all basically as it switches back into Juan's side and he gets to get in another Pokemon.
It'll be interesting to see if that Iron Head is still coming out to that Mawile slot, still trying to get that double attack to KO Mimikyu. It'll be big damage on that Mawile. Really just trying to pin that slot and making the most of that combo of attacks having to go there.
Yeah. And Lucas comes in from that U-turn. The Iron Head from Metagross does a lot of damage onto the Mawile as high horsepower from Snorlax misses on Metagross.
Yeah, unboosted, it's not the KO. It might even be barely a 2-hit KO, but it's still a lot of damage to miss out on with that 95% accurate high horsepower managing to miss. Mawile switches in, does get that Intimidate off, but without its Mega, much more vulnerable and takes more than 50% from that U-turn plus Iron Head combo, and then now is facing down that Amoonguss. Amoonguss definitely going to be faster than Snorlax. Mawile should at least be faster unless it's very much focused on that Trick Room mode and Amoonguss going the other way, but still, Juan Pablo keeping the field position advantage here.
And actually switching out his Metagross for the Tapu Lele, so we'll be getting the Psychic Trade instead of Electric Trade. Going to be boosting any sort of Psychic attack moves from that Tapu Lele, as Mawile protects this turn, not going to take any sort of attack that was potentially coming in from that Pokemon. As Snorlax is free to use Belly Drum when it's starting to cut its HP, get that attack boost all the way up. It's going to be dealing some massive physical damage as it eats its berry again and manages to.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry. A spore from Amoonguss going into that Snorlax not gonna cause it to fall asleep on this turn.
Yeah, really interesting there. Despite the Trick Room mode being so clear on Anthony's side, that the Amoonguss on the other side is slower than Snorlax, and Snorlax manages to get the belly drum off, consume its berry, and then fall asleep. So it won't be able to attack next turn because it will have to sleep at least one turn, and it already has given up that berry. So really vulnerable to big psychic attacks coming out from the Snorlax. At least that Mawil's there to support it, though, but it's going to have to switch out.
Yeah, and we get another terrain change from Tapu Koko switching in for that Mawile spot. So going to take away any sort of boost that Tapu Lele would have gotten earlier as we get Electric Terrain once more. And Tapu Lele showing Psyshock into the Tapu Koko spot, which was previously a Mawile. It's going to almost picks up the KO, but we do see the Life Orb as Snorlax stays asleep for this turn. And Amoonguss using Clear Smog onto the Snorlax, going to get rid of that belly drum boost.
Yeah, a big advantage there for Juan Pablo because that Amoonguss was slower. It lets Snorlax go, yeah, go ahead, burn half of your health to get those +6 boosts, then fall asleep, then I'll just get rid of the boosts, and you did the damage for me. So, really good way that worked out for Juan Pablo, and still an advantageous position for him.
And Tapu Lele switching out for Landorus. So Juan doing a lot of switching here as we get an Intimidate onto both Tapu Koko and Snorlax, again lowering them by one attack stage. The Snorlax, if it's still asleep this turn, might be in a little bit of bad position as Volt Switch into the Amoonguss slot from Anthony's Tapu Koko, going to be switching back to Anthony here.
Yeah, going to have to bring something else in. Amoonguss not obviously taking much damage from that. Snorlax now at -1 attack, way down from that +6 it had a second ago. Mawile come in here and get an Intimidate, but still very vulnerable to whatever Landorus does.
And like you said, then Intimidate into both those Pokemon. A little bit more useful on the Lander slot as it is to the Amoonguss slot. As Snorlax wakes up on this turn using Return, going to connect to that Amoonguss, and it's going to be doing just okay damage after that Clear Smog hitting that Snorlax. And Amoonguss Clear Smogging to Mawile slot, not going to do anything because of the fact that it is a Steel type.
Yeah, just looking for the KO there on Tapu Koko. If it hadn't Volt switched it out, Tapu Koko was definitely low enough that Clear Smog would have just KO'd it. Instead, Mawile comes in, is immune to that, but the difference between immune to Clear Smog and taking neutral damage from Clear Smog isn't that much. So just navigating that Tapu Koko to avoid it. But, you know, every pivot that Anthony makes, it never feels like he's actually leading himself to an advantageous position. He's just trying to stay alive, stay around, and hopefully eventually find the play he needs to make.
And maybe this might be it as he goes into the Mega Evolution on his Mawile, and Amoonguss actually protecting itself this turn is avoiding any sort of damage that might come from Snorlax or Mawile, as Landorus Earthquakes doesn't hit his own Amoonguss because of that Protect, but does a lot, is going to be picking up that knockout on the Mawile, as Snorlax is going to be taking a little bit of damage as well, but not enough to be really considerable.
Yeah, it is Choice Scarf locking itself into that Earthquake, so we'll have to continue to use it.
And the return from Snorlax into the Layer slot, going to get some damage on there. But, you know, also Amoonguss just takes Earthquakes pretty nicely despite the fact that it hits you as well. But Mimikyu coming into the field now for Anthony, so it's going to be this Mimikyu and Snorlax versus all of Juan's Pokemon.
Yeah, but this is now a position that can be strong for Anthony. He can Trick Room now. There's no way to stop it. But the Electric, well, Landorus switch in to the Tapu Lele to allow a Spore of Mimikyu might be the one way around it, but otherwise that Landorus, intimidated and locked into Earthquake, can break the disguise, but Amoonguss isn't going to be doing the damage, and that Electric Train currently blocking Spore. So this could be the chance that Anthony needs to try to work his way back into this game by taking control of the field position. Yeah,
and I totally misspoke. I forgot he still has the Tapu Koko in the back, so he could just do that terrain where we saw earlier in this matchup. I think it's kind of fun because if you look at both sides, they've got kind of like a 2017 team and what you consider a 2018 side too. You've got the Mimikyu and Snorlax versus the Amoonguss Landorus as they kind of just go into this. And Landorus switching out for that Tapu Lele, going to be wanting to potentially get the Spore from the Amoonguss. Going to be overriding this Electric Terrain with Psychic Terrain. And again, Tapu Lele really benefiting from that as we get a Z move from that Mimikyu. And it is not actually it's Mew Z move, but it's going to be the Ghost DMZ. And I
wonder if he predicted that Tapu Lele switch and expected trying to enable that Spore, and he did.
Nice.
Going to be doing huge damage to this Tapu Lele, maybe even picking up the KO. Mimikyu unintimidated here.
Very nice. Yeah, does get the knockout onto that Tapu Lele. So, switching out that Landorus, which was intimidated and locked in, for that Tapu Lele, which is knocked out now, and the return from Snorlax into the Amoonguss, not enough to pick up a knockout, but does manage to Spore the Mimikyu, so this Mimikyu will be asleep for a turn or two.
Yeah, doesn't fall into the trap of trying to Trick Room and instead just falling asleep, instead gets the KO on Tapu Lele. But that means he's still without Trick Room and will continue to be without Trick Room because Mimikyu can't wake up to use it. This Snorlax has become even more intimidated, doesn't really have the offense. If anything you switch Tapu Koko in will knock it out. It is so low, whether that's Rock Slide or Earthquake or U-Turn. Still a really tough position here. He's going to need to get a Belly Drum at some point and have Trick Room, and that may just be too much to ask.
Yeah. Well, especially like now that we know that Amoonguss has Clear Smog, like that's now you're just worried every time you Belly Drum.
And Amoonguss is slower, so it can Clear Smog in that Trick Room before Snorlax attacks.
Yeah. Tapu Koko switching out for that Snorlax slot. This Tapu Koko at very low health is going to be getting the electric terrain. Doesn't matter because there is no other terrain fighter for it. As Landorus Superpower locks itself into Superpower, picks up the knockout on Tapu Koko, but will be getting that -1 to attack and its defense. But, you know, did it stop? Like, knocked out whatever was in that slot. As Mimikyu stays asleep on this turn. And Amoonguss just going to be using Clear Smog onto the Mimikyu, going to break that disguise finally.
Yeah, another useful Clear Smog, getting rid of that disguise and making Mimikyu vulnerable. But I think it was a good Tapu Koko switch. It does just give away Tapu Koko. But you've put Electric Terrain back up. Now with Tapu Lele knocked out, that Amoonguss isn't going to be sporing anything. His Snorlax is going to stay around. And that Landorus is forcing Superpower the Tapu Koko, so your Snorlax is a little better equipped to handle these other superpowers because of that attack drop from Landorus. Still, they're going to be doing a lot of damage, though. Mimikyu's going to need to wake up quickly into a Trick Room here, or it's going to be too late for Anthony.
Excuse me. Yeah, and I think just kind of one of those things, too, where that Snorlax is going to want a Belly Drum, but again, like you mentioned, he's going to have to really figure out how he's going to play around this Mimikyu being asleep and that Landorus with that Superpower. So Landorus, once more going to that Superpower, going to be doing some really good damage onto that Snorlax. Not enough to knock it out because of that attack drop. Getting another attack drop, so -2 right now at defense and at its attack. As Snorlax goes for the Recycle, is going to eat its berry, going to get back a lot of that health, and it's going to be sticking around for a little bit, a lot more while now, especially now that it can take those superpowers a little bit more comfortably. As Amoonguss Clear Smogs once more into that Snorlax slot, kind of probably expecting that Belly Drum, and Mimikyu wakes up, gets the Trick Room here.
Yeah, maybe expecting that Belly Drum, but if you're also superpowering into the slot, you're denying the Belly Drum in that way because you won't have the HP to do it. And City stays in with the superpower, not doing enough damage to make too much of a difference because it is just recovered. And now Landorus is still stuck in the superpower, not threatening damage on Mimikyu. And Electric Terrain is still up, denying what Amoonguss can do, and now Trick Room is up. So, really, by maintaining the field position Juan Pablo is in, he's really given Anthony a chance here. Now that Trick Room is up, now that Snorlax is a little bit more healthy, could recycle again here if it wanted to. This is starting to get dangerous.
Yeah, and Landorus switching out for the Metagross. So this Metagross that we saw like back earlier in these turns is finally hitting the field once more as Amoonguss protects itself from any sort of attack coming from this Mimikyu or this Snorlax. And Snorlax returning into the protected Amoonguss slot as Mimikyu Will-O-Wisping into the slot where Landorus was, connects the Will-O-Wisp, gets the burn on Metagross.
Yeah, this went from dangerous to disastrous here. Anthony really making a comeback with just that Mimikyu and Snorlax core, this Electric Terrain sticking on the field and making Amoonguss just so unhelpful on the field. Maybe worth it to get Amoonguss in the back, get that Regenerator, and hope he can come back on the field once this Electric Terrain expires. But now you've given up half of what Metagross's damage output. Snorlax is going to start looking like it can really recycle this damage, especially if you can get another burn onto that Landorus and restrict what that superpower is doing. Then maybe the first one is a big damage output, but they start weakening quickly. Snorlax may just be able to outlast these Pokemon.
Yeah. And so, Juan, thinking the same way you are, switching out that Amoonguss, hopefully getting some HP back on that because of Regenerator as Landorus hits the field, has the Intimidate onto both Mimikyu and to Snorlax. And Snorlax recycling, going to want to keep that HP up for later. And Mimikyu once more with the Will-O-Wisp connecting again onto the Landorus is going to be really hurting those superpowers. Like great call from you on there. And Metagross Iron heading into the Mimikyu slot, going to be almost enough to knock it out, but not quite that burden. Really important in these types of matchups.
Yeah, the one problem with that Amoonguss switch to Landorus is it is such a good switch that it's very predictable, and so it's very easy to just aim that Will-O-Wisp there. If you do end up hitting Amoonguss, well, you're still getting slow damage output, but when you hit that Landorus, now you're really looking at Snorlax being able to outlast these Pokemon. Metagross gets that Iron Head in, but it's now burnt, so unable to KO the Mimikyu, and too late, because both of the Pokemon Mimikyu needed to get burnt are burnt.
Yeah, and that's rough.
Mimikyu definitely won't be able to get a second Trick Room now, but maybe the speed control isn't what's going to matter here. It's going to be the surviving power, the staying power of the Snorlax to be recycling and staying on the field against these burnt Pokemon.
All right, and Mimikyu protecting, so going to want to try to stick around a little bit more as Snorlax uses high horsepower, connects this time onto that Metagross, does almost no damage because of the fact that it is not at Belly Drum, as the Iron Head goes into the protected Mimikyu, and Landorus U-turns into the Snorlax slot, going to be switching into that Amoonguss, which hopefully regained enough health for Juan to be comfortable with.
Yeah, and maybe Juan going here, you've weakened my physical attackers with all these burns. I'm just going to start cycling Intimidates and get your Snorlax's damage output really low. This is going to start being where none of these Pokemon are doing too much damage once this Mimikyu goes down. But Amoonguss hits the field as Electric Terrain expires, going to be threatening Spores here against Snorlax.
I think that's a nice thing for Juan. Like, you can breathe a little bit. I think the burns are really rough. And I think on Anthony's side, he's really showing why Mimikyu and Snorlax were such a big thing back in 17. And like you said, that Spore from Amoonguss hitting into that Snorlax slot, so that Snorlax will be asleep here. And we still have that. We know that Clear Smog is still on that Amoonguss, and Snorlax staying asleep on this turn as Shadow Claw from Mimikyu connects into the Metagross slot and is not quite enough to get the knockout as Metagross hits into Mimikyu and picks up the KO here.
Yeah, and that's Amoonguss being slower than Snorlax coming out really important here, able to Spore and Trick Room before Snorlax can attack, and that's what allows Metagross to get its attack off. Now Trick Room expires. Metagross will be the fastest thing on the field, but Snorlax will be faster than that Amoonguss once again.
Yeah, well, I mean, like, the Snorlax is still asleep, too, so if it can wake up this turn, the hard part is, I think, for Snorlax, you really want high damage output in the terms of that Belly Drum. And so Metagross Iron heading into Snorlax, going to do some okay damage here as Snorlax eats its berry, comes back from all that damage, gets into the green once more, stays asleep on this turn, though. And this Amoonguss is going to be using Spore into an already asleep Pokemon, just trying to cover bases.
Yeah, you don't want to clear Smog just for damage because you'll be removing your own Intimidate boost. So instead, you just keep Sporing. If it does wake up, you put it right back to sleep. You're saying Snorlax is going to attack once every 2 to 3 turns. And I'm just going to keep doing damage in the meantime. The problem is you do have slow damage output in form of that burn damage coming out on your attackers here.
All right, and so the Iron Head connecting once more. Snorlax staying asleep, not going to be able to recycle or do anything else like that as Amoonguss clears Smogs into that Snorlax, so actually, like you said, gets rid of all those Intimidates that we had earlier from that Landorus, as the Metagross barely holds on past that burn, is around for one more turn on here.
Yeah, maybe Juan Pablo deciding, oh, my damage output is slowly going away from burn. It's not going to be enough. If that one attack every 2 to 3 turns is a recycle that just undoes what damage I've done in the meantime, it's just not going to be enough. He's going to need to start clear Smog just for the damage.
Right, and so Snorlax waking up after taking another Iron Head, but gets the flinch from the Iron Head after waking up, and the Clear Smog from Amoonguss going into that Snorlax one more time as Metagross finally faints from this burn.
Yeah, that flinch so important, but Amoonguss decides to keep Clear Smogging. If it had Spored and put Snorlax back to sleep, this game would have been over.
Oh.
But now Snorlax should have one more chance to attack if it can take this superpower, but it's going to be unclear if it can. Even with the burn, it's at such low health. That flinch so important to keep that recycle from coming out, keeping Snorlax from healing 50% health. This superpower should KO, I think. And if it does, that flinch is going to really, really be
yeah, I mean, like, what a turn,
Anthony.
though, for you. You sit there, you're like, yeah, I'm awake. Oh, but you get that flinch, and that's just so insane. So the superpower from Landorus connected to Snorlax does pick up that knockout on here. Gets the critical hit as well. Like, this Snorlax is just taking a beating. And game 1 going to Juan. That was
But, those are the things that happen when you start having a Pokemon that you're just relying on it being bulky enough, having the recovery move, just stay on the field. That's when flinches, because you're just, I need to heal, happen.
Yeah.
Or crits that are meant to, the game mechanic is there to restrict the ability to just weaken other stats or buff your own defensive stats and outlast Pokemon. And so that comes into play here, gets the KO into Snorlax, and Anthony barely isn't able to stage that comeback. It looked like he had a chance at.
I mean, he did a really good job. Like, I almost thought he was actually going to be able to turn around. Like, he had, like, that Mimikyu and that Snorlax, once he'd gotten that Trick Room up, like I said, being able to show why it was so scary in 2017.
And really wherein the momentum completely changed. When that Lele went down and Electric Terrain hit the field to stay, with no option for Juan Pablo to reverse it, then what that Amoonguss could do was completely restricted. But despite that, Amoonguss stayed on the field for several turns, gave Anthony the time to work his way out of the position he was in. I think Juan Pablo is going to need to be more careful with his Tapu Lele. Not that he was, reckless with it in the last game. It got KO'd on a well-predicted switch-in by Anthony, but going to need to keep it around to make that Amoonguss as valuable as it can be.
Yeah, and well, I think also, like, from Anthony's side, actually seeing maybe that Amoonguss more of as a threat, because once we saw that clear smag, you're so scared now to belly drum, because then you're just wasting a turn where you could do damage to trying to get that attack boost.
The problem is I don't know that he has much of a great answer for it. You look at his roster, Tapu Koko is not a Pokemon that wants to be doing big damage to Amoonguss. Politoed isn't. Mimikyu isn't. Dragonite might be if it's the Hurricane variant, but we don't know what it is. And so
Amoonguss, just one of those Pokemon in 2018 where you're like, yes, I love you, but I hate you so much. Like, what is this? Like, so both players locking into this game too. Hopefully some adjustment. We might be seeing some adjustments on here. Like, I honestly think that Anthony did a very good job. Like you said, I do wish, though, he had protected his Mawa a little bit better.
And part of it is he led into such a rough position, immediately under threat from that double target to KO Mimikyu that kept him on the back foot for like the first 4 to 5 turns before he could find a chance to recover. He's going to need to lead into a better position here.
All right, and so Juan Pablo is leading with the same 2 Pokemon, that Landorus and that Metagross, as we get Mimikyu and Tapu Koko kind of once more from Anthony. So the same leads that we got from game 1 on here. And again, that Landorus is going to be faster on here because it gets to the Intimidate first as Tapu Koko's Electric Surge runs across the battlefield. Yeah, exactly the same Pan Mimikyu that was there before. Anthony's got to maybe find a different way to play out of it. Maybe you just have to risk that Landorus goes for the Earthquake to KO Tapu Koko, and instead you go for something like protecting Mimikyu and targeting down that Metagross with maybe the Electrium Z on Tapu Koko. Find some way to counter damage with damage and get out of this other than just switching around for 4 to 5 turns and losing a lot of your Pokemon in the process. Well, because you also lose like a lot of momentum that way, like when you're constantly trying to switch out and then not do any sort of damage onto your opponent. We have Metagross from Juan Pablo's side going to be Mega Evolving as Tapu Koko protects itself and Mimikyu also protecting itself this turn. So neither Pokemon on this side are going to be taking damage from whatever Landorus does, which is actually going to be U-turning into the Mimikyu slot. So kind of trying to showing that same strategy from before as the Iron Head also goes into the protected Mimikyu.
Yeah, I think that's a strong move from Anthony, finding out exactly what that Landorus is locked into, not risking that Landorus locks itself into Earthquake to KO Tapu Koko, but instead finding out that it locks itself into U-turn, knowing now that Tapu Koko is safe to attack that Metagross this turn. Landorus Earthquake's not going to KO Tapu Koko before, or rather, Landorus U-turn's not going to KO Tapu Koko before it moves. So you know that Tapu Koko can threaten that Metagross, and if it does have that Electrium Z, threaten it with the KO. So definitely a good change in first turn there for Anthony.
And so Snorlax switching into the Mimikyu slot from Anthony's side as Landorus U-turns into the Tapu Koko slot this time. Going to be switching out for something in the back on Juan Pablo's. So
yeah, I mean, Metagross didn't protect itself. If it is that Electrium Z coming out, could just be the KO right here. Snorlax coming in to take that U-turn Iron Head combination. Instead, the U-turn goes into Tapu Koko. Juan Pablo not even expecting Mimikyu to stay on the field and just deciding to put that U-turn somewhere else.
And we have the Tapu Lele switching from that Landorus as, we have that Electrium Z from Tapu Koko.
But now Psychic Train's up. Shouldn't be the KO. So found another way to keep Metagross safe.
Yeah, I mean, these switch-ins are just so much fun to watch as you try to see how they counteract this. So Gigavolt Havoc from that Tapu Koko, like you said, not going to be doing that much damage because we have the Psychic Terrain. Would have been so much more boosted because of Electric Terrain. Going into the Metagross slot, Metagross going to be taking that pretty, almost into the red, but still hanging on as it uses Stomping Tantrum and connects into the Snorlax slot.
Ooh, that was really dangerous there. I thought that Stomping Tantrum was going to be going to Tapu Koko and removing Electric Terrain for the rest of the game, and then Amoonguss is just free.
That would have been really cool.
But instead, Stomping Tantrum goes into Snorlax, maybe expecting something else to switch into that Mimikyu spot that would maybe like Mawile, like exactly what happened in the first game.
Yeah.
That would have taken a lot of damage from that Stomping Tantrum, and so Tapu Koko lives to fight another day, but now with Electric Terrain up, maybe can try to KO Metagross before it moves, but you're risking a lot by doing that. So I would expect it to go out to the back and make sure that it's there to counter that Amoonguss late in the game if it needs to.
Yeah, I think if you're Anthony, you're breathing a little bit of sigh, at least seeing that Stomping Tantrum would go into that Snorlax slot as opposed to Tapu Koko. As Landorus on Juan Pablo's side, switching out from that Metagross that was here. Going to be intimidating both that Snorlax and that Tapu Koko. Going to lower them by 1 attack stage. As Tapu Koko Volt switches into the Tapu Lele slot. So going to be switching out on Anthony's side, going to be preserving that Electric Terrain for later.
And a good call to not go for the Volt Switch to try to get the KO on Metagross. If you'd been like, I can just get the Volt Switch KO and keep Tapu Koko safe, you'd have been hitting right into Landorus for immunity, and Tapu Lele likely would have just been Psychicking Tapu Koko for the knockout.
That definitely would have been my move, probably on accident. Tapu Lele actually taunting into the Snorlax, so going to prevent any sort of belly drum from happening as Snorlax returns into the previous Metagross slot. Is actually going to be Landorus now, and Mimikyu switching in from that Volt Switch on Tapu Koko.
Yeah, this should be another safe position to Trick Room, maybe, depending on what that Tapu Lele is. If it is the we've seen the Life Orb, so I think Mimikyu should be able to take that Life Orb Psychic. So even if Landorus breaks the disguise, Mimikyu could get Trick Room if it wants to. Snorlax, taunted, won't be able to go for the Belly Drum. Also has been intimidated, so not having that much damage output. Likely going to want to switch to just revert both of those conditions. So maybe your Trick Room isn't as valuable, because if your switch is into a fast Pokemon like Tapu Koko, then your Trick Room isn't as useful.
Yeah, well, and now that you know that you have Taunt on Tapu Lele, like, when you press Trick Room might actually matter a little bit more now, especially given that the speed tiers here might come into play as well. But like you said, that Snorlax intimidated and taunted is going to be switching out on Anthony's side for the Mawile instead. So Mawile generally, having run Sucker Punch, won't be able to really use that with Psychic Trade on here, but it does have the Intimidate. It's going to be lowering the Landorus, importantly, on Juan Pablo's side and the Tapu Lele, but Tapu Lele is going to be protecting itself on this turn from any sort of move from that Mimikyu, which is the only thing left to move in here, as the Landorus U-turns into the Mawile spot and goes back to Juan Pablo.
Yeah, this could be a really strong turn here. I mentioned if you switch to a fast Pokemon, Trick Room's no good. Switching to Mawile, Trick Room's great. You're threatening that Iron Head against Tapu Lele. The U-turn doesn't even break that Mimikyu disguise, so you might end up with Trick Room in disguise in play, but Amoonguss hits the field.
Yeah, so Amoonguss coming in for Juan Pablo's side as Mimikyu uses Trick Room. The Tapu Lele protected itself this turn, though, so it is going to be not able to protect unless he gets really lucky.
And that's why you have the Tapu Koko in the back. Tapu Koko needs to come in here. Tapu Lele was on the field. You can't get Psychic Train again this turn, so you can 100% stop the Spore and make sure that Mawile is able to attack. Amoonguss doesn't threaten Mawile in any way. It can Rage Powder away the Iron Head from Tapu Lele and allow Tapu Lele to get a Psychic off, but you can at least make sure you get an attack off.
Yeah, so Landorus switching into the Tapu Lele spot on Juan Pablo's side. Going to be getting Intimidated onto both of these Pokemon, which are generally very high attack Pokemon, and going to make him a little bit less of a threat as Mawile Mega Evolves, and we have it hopefully going to be doing some more work this round.
Yeah, no switch to
that Tapu Koko
here. Spore could be coming out, but it's not.
And the Clear Smog from Amoonguss hitting into the Mimikyu, going to break its disguise.
And remove the Intimidate.
Remove the Intimidate on here. That's always so interesting. And I feel like it's kind of showing that Juan doesn't really have any other options for this. As Mawile's Iron Head goes into the Amoonguss slot, and Mimikyu Shadow Clawing into the Landorus slot that was that Tapu Lele previous.
Yeah, Mimikyu unable to go for that Ghost Team Z like we saw in the previous game because that Gigavolt Havoc has already come out, so instead restricted to Shadow Claw for damage against Landorus. Doing more damage against that Landorus because that Clear Smog came out. Interesting to see that Spore didn't come out. I guess Juan Pablo did expect Tapu Koko to come in so much that he Clear Smogs that Mimikyu, maybe not expecting to break a Mimikyu disguise, but to put a decent chunk of damage on a switching in Tapu Koko.
That would have been good for him. Yeah, and now we have the Tapu Koko switching in for the Mimikyu on Anthony's side. Going to take over and change from that Psychic Train to Electric Train, so any Spore from Amoonguss is just not going to be doing anything here. But Amoonguss actually going for Rage Powder, going to be drawing any sort of attack from that Mawile to itself as Mawile goes once more for the Iron Head. Going to hit Amoonguss, almost gets it into the red, rocks the berry, so Amoonguss gets a lot of that health back, showing exactly what a bulky Pokemon it can be. As Landorus Earthquakes into this, oh my gosh, into this Tapu Koko and this Mawile. This Amoonguss taking it very comfortably as that Mawile survives with 2 HP, but Tapu Koko is knocked out.
Amoonguss also hanging on just barely in the red, but yeah, deciding that Tapu Koko is likely to switch in. I was probably not going to get a Spore off, but you know what I can do? I can Rage Powder that Iron Head away from Landorus, make sure that that Earthquake comes off, and do so much damage.
Yeah. I mean, this Mawile is still around, can get, another attack, and the Snorlax is here. It's not taunted anymore. It's not intimidated anymore. But, ooh,
One interesting thing here, Amoonguss only probably having Clear Smog as offensive output, even at 2 HP, won't be able to pick up the KO before it moves. So maybe going to have to continue to Rage Powder away that, or could try to go for something else, but that Trick Room still coming in important here because Amoonguss in the Electric Train with only Clear Smog as offense can't really take advantage of being the fastest Pokemon.
Yeah. And so Landorus switching out for the Tapu Lele. I'm going to be overriding that Electric Train into Psychic Train. And, this is such a big deal because Tapus and their terrains are just such a they're just so hard to work around sometimes as the Spore from Amoonguss connects with Snorlax thanks to that Tapu Lele switch in, overriding the Electric Train, which prevents Pokemon from falling asleep. So Snorlax going to be asleep on this turn as Mawile uses Iron Head once more, actually going into the Tapu Lele slot, gets the knockout on there, but this Snorlax is now asleep.
Yeah, a lot to digest that turn. Tapu Lele comes in to make sure that Spore can get off, gives Amoonguss something valuable to do, puts Snorlax to sleep. Now with Tapu Koko knocked out, that Psychic Surge and that Psychic Train is here to stay. In the last game, it was Electric Train that outlasted. This time it's Psychic Train that outlasted. But that Tapu Lele was such a good switch in, again, that it was predictable for Anthony. He was able to Iron Head and get the KO on Tapu Lele. So trading that Tapu Koko knockout on the previous turn for the Tapu Lele knockout on this turn, but because the Tapu Lele was knocked out second, it's going to be Psychic Train and lots of spores.
Oh, Amoonguss is going to have a really fun time on this field. And so Metagross actually coming in for that fallen Tapu Lele is going to be really able to take advantage of this Psychic Train if it has Zen Headbutt, which, you know, Lele and Metagross is kind of like one of those things where it was kind of fun to see for a while. And Protect from Mawile, not going to take any damage on this turn as Amoonguss Rage Powders any sort of attack to it, but that Mawile is protecting itself, and the Snorlax is actually, it wakes up on this turn, returns into the Amoonguss slot, so does manage to knock it out from that range. And this Metagross, having switched in, is now free to attack and uses Stomping Tantrum into the protected Mawile slot as Trick Room expires this turn and the Twisted Dimensions return to normal.
Yeah, I think that was a good turn for Anthony. That Rage Powder really not doing that much. I would expect that return was going into Amoonguss, trying to get that KO'd. I said lots of spores, no spores, because return's able to come out and knock it out. And protecting that 2 HP Mawile to survive another day, maybe threaten a Sucker Punch, like you mentioned earlier, find a way to be useful at this low health, at this out of Trick Room, even at this low health. Snorlax is going to be relying on Bulk to be useful in this game. Probably, even after the Intimidate, able to pick up the KO on Metagross with high horsepower.
Yeah, and so Mawile using a Sucker Punch onto Landorus manages to get it just like almost knocked out, but not enough for Landorus to not be able to Rock Slide. So it does connect the Rock Slide onto both Snorlax and to Mawile. Picks up the knockout on Mawile and manages to proc Snorlax's berry as Metagross goes for the Iron Head into the Snorlax slot. That was me speaking very badly, guys, but has the flinch.
Again,
and, oh my God,
another really important Iron Head flinch. Yeah, I think Anthony was really hoping for that Sucker Punch KO. If that Sucker Punch comes out and does KO, then Mawile stays on the field for yet another turn. And then he's also hoping that Iron Head doesn't flinch, and then High Horsepower comes out and KOs Metagross. And then it's over. You've got your 2 KOs. Still in a strong position here because of that staying power of Snorlax, though. We've seen Landorus lock himself into Rock Slide. No threat of Superpower. We did see the Iron Head come out, so probably no Zen Headbutt. Zen Headbutt would have come out if it was there. So not the damage output to KO Snorlax here. Mimikyu out with its disguise. Both these Pokemon in Shadow Claw range. This still should be Anthony's game, as long as there aren't too many Rock Slide flinches.
All right, yeah, so Rock Slide from Landorus, because it's been locked in, it's going to be connected with both Pokemon here. Does some good damage onto Mimikyu. And Iron Head from Metagross into the Mimikyu slot, and is enough to pick up the knockout on here. So Mimikyu going to be going down on this turn, not around to like pick up a knock here, as Return from Snorlax connects with that Landorus.
Yeah, so many flinching moves, so many risks. Doesn't have the flinch there, but we're going to be looking at it again on the next turn. Iron Head shouldn't be able to pick up the KO on Snorlax from here, so it'll take 2 hits. High Horsepower should be able to pick up the KO.
Oh man, so Metagross Iron Heads into that Snorlax, and it gets into Roar as High Horsepower connects with this Metagross, and is going to be enough to pick. Oh,
no, it's not!
Oh,
it just barely missed. And so Metagross is going to pick up the KO with Iron Head on the next turn. Both of these Pokemon just barely hanging on.
This Intimidate cycling, though, just what the heck? Like, this Snorlax at 4 HP, this Metagross a sliver of HP left. That Intimidate cycling is just so, it's just so important at this point. And, like, Metagross going for that Iron Head, gets the 2 HP knockout onto that Snorlax, giving the round to Juan Pablo. So,
yeah, both games featured really critical Iron Head flinches. But there were so many flinching moves coming out. Those Rock Slides, those Iron Heads. If you're using that many, one's going to happen at some point. It's not bad luck for Anthony there. It's just expected luck for Juan that one of those flinches gets one in both Game 1 and Game 2 and takes the set.
Yeah. Well, but you know what, though? I will say the way Anthony adjusted in Game 2, I really respected, and I was a big fan of, like, even both of these players consistently going between the terrains and switching out just really goes to show you that you can't sleep on, like, these, on, like, the Tapus and their terrains. No pun intended, you know, involving, like, the sleeps. But just understanding exactly how you control, that was something like, but, like, understanding how to control when you spore or when you switch and what you can do.
Yeah, and really the critical aspect of that match is that Anthony, with his Trick Room team, did not have an answer for that Amoonguss. Just nothing that could put out the damage quickly enough. He had to attack it so many times to get it KO'd, and it did so many useful things in those turns. Rage Powdering to protect more important damaging Pokemon, Sporing to prevent a lot of those turns that should have been valuable for Anthony in Trick Room. Instead, were spent sleeping. Amoonguss clearly the MVP of that match.
Yeah. Even with just like the clear Smogus that's attacking move, like you're removing your own intimidates, but at the end, this Amoonguss put in so much work with all that sporing, like with that Tapu Lele. And I think on Anthony's side, maybe as much as like I say like some of his systems good, I think it was hard for him, I think, to change his lead from that Mimikyu and that Tapu Koko, just because he wants that Mimikyu and that Trick Room up so badly, but.
Yeah, and I think the lead was the problem in Game 1, but in Game 2, that first turn was a little bit better. He found a better way to play it, but then it still turned against him when Tapu Lele came in and prevented that Electrium Z Gigavolt Havoc from KOing Metagross. Think about how different this game is if Metagross just goes down on turn 1. Yeah. You're not worrying about any of those Iron Heads.
Metagross, one of those Pokemon that it's just such a powerhouse now, and like even though it doesn't, knock out Snorlax, it is a very good answer for the most part to Snorlax and to a lot of Pokemon that support Snorlax, like we just saw in this match. So, very good job to Juan Pablo, and a really good job on Anthony's side, too. So, we will see you guys in a little bit for round 6, if I can count properly. So, once again, I'm Virginia Angley, Lendul. Thank you guys for joining us, and we'll see you in a little while.
Thank you.
That was...